Here we go. You ready?
Yes.
All right. Here we go. In 3, 2, 1. Welcome, everyone, to episode number 3 of the XPerience podcast. I'm your host, once again, Pastor Gabe, and we have a very, very special person here today that we know, that I personally know, that honestly, the whole entire youth ministry team knows. This young lady grew up in our youth ministry, and now she is actually serving as one of the key leaders of this youth ministry. She has an amazing testimony that she wants to share today, and as well get into a deep conversation about the things that she has learned from her experience growing up from youthhood into adulthood. Please, everybody, welcome Miss Tiffany. How we doing?
Doing so good today. We're feeling swell.
We're feeling swell.
Mm-hmm.
SWEL.
L.
Swell.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start with this because I think nobody really knows, but if you want a swell sweatshirt, please just hit us up with a comment. I don't
Link in bio,
exactly
maybe.
Link in bio. I'm just gonna give you a link of the sweater. We don't make monies off these. We just believe in the movement, right?
Yep.
We're a big time movement believers, and it's very, very funny how the word swell just kind of caught on with our youth ministry, right?
Mm-hmm.
What did you think about it when I first said it at that worship meeting?
Well, it was kind of just an unexpected thing that kind of took off. I actually asked you how you were doing today. I was like, Pastor Gabe, how are you doing today? It was like, oh, just swell. And I was like, swell? I've never heard that before. So I was like, then I was just like kept saying it, and then everyone else kept saying it. And then it just became our own thing. That's what I like about it the most, that no other youth group can say they're feeling swell. I mean, you can if you want, but it's like our thing. That's what I like about it. It's original.
Exactly. You can, but if you use it, we're going to have to charge you. We've already copyrighted it. So,
right.
Nobody.
It's trademarked.
It's trademarked completely. So if you use the term swell, I'm just kidding. We're on YouTube. I can't say that legally. No, you can go ahead and use swell you want. But if you want a swell sweatshirt, please let us know. We'll drop a link down below. Obviously custom-made sweatshirts are a little bit expensive, but we don't make any money off of it. We just believe in the movement of swellness.
Yep.
So very, 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 very interesting thing that we went through as far as the swell movement, because now it's catching on with our youth ministry. But we want to talk about you today. Before the second episode, because you were actually here to watch it, you said that you wanted to be part of the podcast. I'm like, cool, we're going to mark you down for next week. We're going to do what we need to do. And I think one of the conversations that we want to have is we want this XPerience podcast to be authentic, to be real, to be very open. And I think the second episode really set the tone for that. And I know that a lot of the times, especially when it comes to our testimony, we like to hide things away. But here in this space, in this podcast, we want to be vulnerable. We want to be open. We want to be authentic. And we want to be able to speak to our audience that is listening about what can we learn from this? How can we grow from this for people out there that may be going through the same exact things? And so what inspired you to kind of come on here today and to share your story, and what are you hoping for in regards to joining us?
Well, I really wanted to get on here and talk about, especially just because I knew like the essence and what you were going for with this. And I think the second episode, or this last one, like definitely set the tone for that. Because just like about the vulnerability that was put on, and my original thing of why I wanted to do it was because I think that there are young people out there that can learn from what you went through and your testimony and what you have to share. You never know who it can affect. And I think that there's such a special thing in being vulnerable and honest and sharing like what you went through, of why you're here, is really, really like significant,
Yeah, no, it's very significant. And one of the points that I made last week is that you can look at a person and judge them by the outside or their title, but in reality, you don't know exactly what that person had to go through.
Right.
It's easy to judge a book by its cover until you actually open the book and actually read it.
Right.
You may never realize how good of a story it is, or how much of a miracle it is to see where that person came from to where they are today.
Right.
And so I want to spend a little bit of time talking about your testimony and what God has done in your life. Because you've been, let's be honest, you've been through a bit of a journey with us at New Season Youth. So
Absolutely.
how'd you get connected to this youth ministry to begin with? And what was it like for you when you, just as a normal youth student coming to New Season Youth, what was it like for you?
So I started coming here like 3 years ago. I think that's 2021-ish. Like in the summertime, I started coming here. I grew up in church all my life, but and I was attending a different youth group, and Elizabeth, shout out Elizabeth.
Shout
out to my girl.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Elizabeth. That's why I'm sitting here today.
She's here today because of you.
Yep.
Number one, Jesus, but number two, you.
Yep. Elizabeth was my youth leader at my other former youth group at a different church in Roseville. And she had transitioned out, and I was kind of just like, that youth group was kind of falling off the wagon a little bit, not in that way, but it was kind of just like the dynamic wasn't the same. A lot of students were not attending anymore. And I was like, hey, Elizabeth, like, where are you at these days? Because like I was looking for a new youth group, right?
Yeah.
And she was like, well, I actually came to this church New Season, and I'm a youth leader here now. Like, you should come check it out. And so me and her kind of reconnected, whatever, and she brought me here. And I remember when I first came here, I was like, I actually feel accepted here. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like this is a home here and a family. It wasn't just about like sitting here and you listen and then you go home. You know what I'm saying? Like, there was a significant thing that I felt here, and I just loved it.
Yeah.
So.
No, that's great. You know, like I said, when you first came through the doors, obviously, you know, my whole dynamic is no matter where you come from in life, no matter what background, what language you speak, because we are a bilingual youth ministry for the most part. We always feel like we bring you in as you are and allow God to do the rest.
Right.
You know?
Right.
As humans, a lot of times we want to force change. You know, like when you're in high school and you date that one person that you're not supposed to date, and you're like, but I can change them, I promise you. That's not going to happen, you know? Like, we've all been through that phase, you know, and as you
most definitely.
Most definitely.
Most definitely.
I have been through that phase as well. Well, actually, not specifically me, other friends. They always tell me that. I'm like, bro, she's not going to change. Like, what are you telling? He's like, nah, bro, I can change her. I'm like,
no, I've been through the change phase.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I had that mindset, so I know what you're talking about. And I'm sure other girls also think that in high school. So
exactly. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, who are they DMing? Oh,
not me.
Oh, definitely not me. Oh, I'm not on their favorite page. What are you talking about? So you came to this youth ministry, and I think quickly you really got involved with the worship team specifically. You had one of my favorite worship moments of all time. So long story short, we play tracks for the youth group because we don't necessarily have a full band. She was singing Fresh Outpouring, and at
shout out Kim Walker.
Shout out Kim Walker. If you watch this, that'd be great. If not, we're still giving you a shout out anyway.
I'm gonna send this to you. Hopefully you watch. Just kidding.
Hopefully you watch. Yeah. Please be very nice. I'm just kidding. But it literally, like at the main part when you're about to sing like that second bridge, the person that was in the back, it wasn't me. I was there to witness.
I don't even know who it was.
I'm trying to remember who it was.
It's an unnamed source. It was in the back.
It's an unnamed source. Actually, I remember who it is, but I'm going to keep the name out of my mouth.
We're not going to name drop.
We're not going to name drop. You know, we want this video to stay up. So the person in the back accidentally hits the arrow down button, which causes the whole track to like disappear with the back. Gone. And I'm thinking like
awkward silence, Loki.
The whole track stops, but we still had a keyboardist and a drummer, and she's still singing, and it's like, we need a fresh outpouring, and they're going, and all the youth are just so on fire and so excited. I can hear Pastor Seth screaming, yeah.
Yep.
And the other girl in the back that was with me, she was freaking out. She's like, I'm sorry, Pastor Kim. I'm like, no, this is good. This is good.
You just see you in the back.
And I'm like, keep it going.
No, it was great though. That was one of my favorite moments too.
I think I told you on the side already. I would say that's the number 2 moment. I've been doing youth ministry for 6 years. I've been doing this ministry for 6 years. I've never seen like that, anything like that ever. But it just spoke to how you came in, who you were, and for it to be your first night, for everything to kind of go completely wrong, specifically with your song. You just remained in the moment. You remained in the presence of God. And honestly, it was definitely one of my favorite moments of all time in the youth ministry.
Yeah, definitely mine as well. It was just, I think there's such a like special thing to like spontaneous worship. Yeah. And I think in that moment, I remember like, I didn't even freak out when the track went out because I was just like, this is like a raw moment. You know what I'm saying? So, and it was great.
No, it set the tone for that a whole entire night, and it's definitely one of the most memorable nights that I will never forget, especially as a youth pastor. And so, let's talk a little bit about your journey. You came in. What was your journey like, especially going from youthhood into young adulthood? What was that season for you like? We haven't really talked a lot about it. You took some time away. You're back here. You're in leadership. You're on fire for God. Just really share your journey as far as how you got here today and the lessons that you've learned.
Oh, man. So I think high school, going into high school, I wasn't here yet, but I had a little rough, like middle school to high school transition a little bit. Just because I always caught myself like hanging out with the wrong crowds or like, and there was things going on at home with my dad, you know, and my family. And, it just kind of pushed me into the wrong mindset of things that at that time too, like I had walked away from my previous youth group because, I just like, I think in a moment where you're going like through so many things and you think that like the world is caving in on you, like you just like crawl into your own thing. And that ultimately leads to like not the best decisions and not the best friends being around you, you know? That's why I think it's really important to like who's around you, like who's feeding you, you know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
But high school, it started off fine. I got into like just a bad relationship in high school.
Okay.
That kind of like curved my path, you know? I think that the importance of also like being equally yoked with someone is like now looking back on it is like really important because I wasn't being led like in the spirit or like with this person like wasn't practicing and didn't believe in God. So ultimately like that has something to do with how you are and like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I still went throughout high school and actually COVID hit during freshman year. And I think that was like the best thing to ever happen to me because I couldn't go to school and like see this person anymore.
Yeah.
And so I definitely had like a lot of time to myself, a lot of time with my family. And, you know, I like got back into church again and I was like feeling myself again, like my relationship with God. And then junior year, was it junior year that I came here?
I think it was junior year when you started coming here.
Yeah. So then I kind of transitioned out of that youth group previously, and then I started coming here. Yeah, junior year. And it was, when I came here, I don't think I was as on fire for God than I am right now because my heart wasn't in the right place still, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that there was definitely things that I was struggling with still and making the wrong choices again, hanging out with the wrong friends. And a lot of it had to be with like people pleasing. Like I was a people pleaser. And that had a lot to do with like where I was at because now that I am where I am, like a lesson from that time is like if I could speak to my younger self type thing, you know, it would be like if you can't be here and serve God if you serve like the world.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like it just didn't clash right. And that's what was happening with me.
Yeah.
I kept trying to like, because I knew like I would always feel one thing about me is like God always like convicts my heart. I feel conviction all the time. And it's so important to like not ignore that because a lot of times I would ignore that.
Yeah.
But regardless of, you know, what was happening, like I still knew like the right thing was to like I knew God had a call in my life with worship. I knew God had a call in my life to be a leader, but it's almost like I chose to walk away from that, like being in the fullness of that, because what I was doing on the side and who I was on the side it didn't clash right. So you can't make good decisions and fully be in your calling and walk in the path that God really has for you if you're one foot in, one foot out.
Yeah.
And that's where I was at. And so senior year, I kind of had a rough time senior year.
Yeah.
Like my parents and I were talking about senior year and how they're like, oh yeah, and I was like, man, like I had a rough 4 years of high school, you know? But senior year was kind of tough for me, and it was kind of, just up and down thing. And this relationship that I was in was a really, really, really tough one for me.
Yeah.
And then when that had ended, after senior year, I think God really told me, like, hey, like, it's time for you to, like, fully go into what I'm calling you to.
Wow.
Like, for real this time.
Yeah.
And I felt in my spirit like it wasn't a joke, where, like, everything aside, like, God told me, like, you need to turn your life around.
Yeah.
Because I'm right here next to you. You can do it.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. I started coming here, like, every single Wednesday, being with the youth, like, made me, like, God was fulfilling me, And when I found myself, like, putting certain habits down, putting certain friends down, even if it wasn't, like, in my control, because a lot of the friendships just, like, started falling away from me.
Yeah.
And I was like, God, like, what is going on? Like, I'm alone, you know? And I had to, like, learn to fully be in a season where, like, it's just you and God.
Yeah.
Because he's preparing to level you up to the next season.
Exactly.
Type thing. And so I think right now, a lot of those lessons of just, like, friends, relationships, like, who you, like, identity issues, like, who you are, like, around your friend groups, around who you are at home, like, what music that you listen to, even, like, who's feeding you, you know what I'm saying? Like, all those lessons, like, it goes into who you are, and it definitely taught me a big thing. And yeah.
Oh, I got it.
Yeah.
No, you've been on one heck of a journey. I've had the opportunity, at least for the essentially middle of high school till today, really. And obviously I've been on the journey myself. I took a full year off of being a youth pastor,
right?
But just to kind of hear the experiences that you went through and to see where you are today just shows, number one, God's grace is so real that no matter how many times you feel like you fell down, you mess up, his sacrifice is sufficient enough to cover all of our sins. And then in the midst of that, even when we give our life to Christ, we don't walk in as a perfect person. Why? Because our works are filthless rags. They're filthy. We're filthy. We're filthy people. We mess up time and time again, but it's him that makes us clean, that allows us to go out and change and be renewed every day. And so I want to touch a little bit on the journey. What do you think in that period of time was like your rock bottom moment? Was it during high school? Was it kind of shortly after? Where was it at where you felt like this is like the lowest of the lower where I was at?
I think after I graduated high school, I was like at a low for sure. I think that was like rock bottom for me.
Yeah.
1000%.
Rock bottom. And as far as like rock bottom in that season, like where were you at as far as the people in your life? Were you talking to the people that you needed to talk to, or were you in a space where you're just kind of hanging out with those same people and kind of just shutting down everybody else?
In that season, I definitely, God had me in a place where I prayed and I asked God, and I was like, where do I go from here?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I was just completely lost because I still had those bad friends around. I still was in a relationship that God didn't put me in, like, he didn't have planned for me.
Yeah.
And I was like, what do I do? Because, like, I didn't know like what my next steps were, you know? And shortly after that, you know, God just started revealing things to me.
Yeah.
And those friendships just fell away.
Yeah.
There were hard decisions that I had to make, people I had to say goodbye to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found myself fully having to turn my life around because it was just such a dark place. Like, even like putting habits down, putting things down that I just, it wouldn't have continued in a good direction.
I gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah, because that path that you talk about in regards to the transition, a lot of the times friendships are there.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're in Christ, we don't have to say anything to make them go away. It's just the natural course of history of time. Friendships tend to like dissipate over time because you're not in their space anymore.
Right.
Not because you don't love them, not because you didn't care for them, not because you had this one-on-one conversation with them, but you're just not in their space anymore.
Right.
And there are people out there that will respect your space in that way while they're still in the same spot. So when it comes to the friendships that you did have before, you know, you're in a good space right now. You're serving, you're loving God, you're serving in the youth ministry. Where do you stand as far as the relationships that you did have before? Like, do you ever feel like you'll ever be back in a space where you can kind of find yourself around those friends again and be able to be maybe a good influence? Where are you at when it comes to that? Where do you feel like you're at in your season?
I think what you just said was definitely something that I needed to like adjust to.
Yeah.
I didn't understand why my friendships that I thought were for me, and I'm a very like loyal person.
Yeah.
So I have a hard time for like people that I've invested so much years and like time and effort into just like fall away. You know? I had a hard time like seeing that happen. And so like, for example, I had this best friend of 5 years, like all of high school, we were like inseparable. And she just never responded to me one day. And it just like, we were starting to have little arguments because I was starting to go to church more.
Yeah.
And I was starting to, you know, like hang out with like better people more, different crowds.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand why like she didn't want to be around me anymore.
Yeah.
You know? And there were certain things that she went to go do that I couldn't do anymore. Yeah. So in those moments, I would have to be like, hey, I'm sorry, like I can't hang out with you today. Yeah. Or I can't go because you're going here, this or that way.
Yeah.
And I had such a hard time, like, because I kind of sent her a message just like talking about the things going on in our friendship.
Yeah.
And she never responded to me.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, wow, like that was a big blow for me because I was like, how can someone, in my head at that time, I was like, how can someone just like throw away 5 years of friendship?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I had to get to a point where I was like, God is elevating me. They're just not meant for you anymore.
Yeah.
You know, like there's what I still love her.
Yeah.
It took me a long time. I had to forgive her because I just had so much resentment in my heart because I was like, I would never do someone like that.
Yeah.
So in that way, so I was like, why would they do that to me?
Yeah.
You know? And so I had to get to a place definitely where like, you have to forgive the people that wronged you in either way. You have to just love them, like you said, from a distance. Yeah. And that's something that I had to adjust to because you don't want to. You don't want to do that sometimes. Yeah. But when God is taking you from one place to another place, people are just going to fall away. And that ended up happening to my whole circle, you know, that I thought that was for me, and they're just not, you know?
No, it happens naturally to the point to where you don't quite understand why it happens until years down the line when you grow up, when you begin to find yourself in a space of ministry, when you find yourself in a space of peace, of joy, of happiness, when you find yourself in a space of like down the lines building a family. You really don't quite understand it, and part of the reason that is the case is because as young people, the thing that we value the most is our relationships.
Right.
And it's not necessarily a dollar amount. It's not a career. It's not kids. Hopefully you don't have kids when you're young or anything like that.
No.
You know, the things that you value are, number one, your friendships, and two, maybe the very few little things that you actually do have. Like, but it's more importantly, the relationships.
Right.
And so as far as the relationship aspect of it, you know, how much did you really value those relationships versus how much you felt like you needed those relationships? Like, did you value them to the point, or did you feel like I needed these at this time in my life because of where I was at as a person?
I think I definitely did value them.
Yeah.
Just because, like I said, like, so much, like, I just see people, like, through so much, like, love, you know? And so I value it, but I also was a person that's like, I need to be around people.
Yeah.
I need to be with this person. I need to be to, like, wherever I was at. Like, I used to be the type that was like, I just can't be alone.
Oh, okay.
Type thing. And so it was just like, for God to teach me a certain lesson to where, like, I'm alone majority of the time now, you know, and, like, kind of just, like, tightening, like, who you hang around. And yeah, that was definitely a tough thing for me to adjust to, but it's all a lesson at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think one of the things that we learn about our youth is that we need relationship. And the first relationship that we build is with mom and dad.
Right.
The next relationship we build is with brother and sister, if you have any brothers and sisters, if you're an only child. You know, that gets kind of weird at times. That's why I'm trying to have a second child. So I want my son.
I am an only child.
You are an only child? So yeah, you go out, you're like, I got to hang out with my neighbors. I'm going to hang out with me. I'm going to hang out with the dog.
I'm like, what's your dog up to?
Yeah, exactly. You know, we're going to go kick it, you know, go play some soccer, Air Bud. So it gets one to one of those spaces, but when you, especially when you start getting into school, friendships, you know, friendships mean more to you than anything. And in the hopes of that, as you continue to grow up, you hope that those relationships will last longer than they were. Because when you're a little kid, they last 1 week. You're like, man, we were so good friends for like a whole week.
Right.
But when you get to high school, when you get to those spaces, you're like, I hope this friendship lasts forever. But I'm here to tell you, young people, maybe out of those 8 people, you might still be hanging out with that one person. You know, that was my case. My inner group of 8 people, there's really only one person that remained in my life for 10 years, you know, but we had like best friends, you know, we were both best men at each other's wedding, that whole spiel. And even today, even though we have family and we have things going on in life, we spend time to text each other happy birthday, little things like that. But that's what the relationships end up being, not necessarily dissipated, but because things come up in life and things change over time and your priorities change over time. And so as you continue to grow up, you'll realize that your priorities will change over time to the point to where even though you may not have those relationships that you once had, you'll cherish them over time.
Right.
You know, you'll cherish the memories, you'll cherish the times, because in the end of the day, the seasons that you went through in those relationships ultimately help you build you up to the person that you became today. Absolutely. Or the lessons that you learned from them built you up to who you are today. So we had a little bit of a conversation about this on the side. What are your thoughts today in regards to relationships? Is it okay to have relationships that with people that are non-Christian or do not necessarily go to church? And if so, when is the right time, do you think, in your mind, based off of your experience?
Yeah, I remember kind of having this conversation with you. My transition to college was definitely a time where, like, I met a bunch of different people. I met people of different backgrounds, and I started finding myself, like, getting not, like, close with, but I started encountering people that, like, they weren't practicing their faith, and they, like they've been to church, like, they know about church, they know about God, but, like, they don't want to practice it, or, like, they don't want to live their life that way.
Exactly.
Fully. You know what I'm saying?
I got you.
And so I'm like, where does that come in with, because I feel like I'm at a point where I'm like, I'm going all in. You know what I'm saying? Like, so who do I have around? And at first I used to think like, well, I can't hang around them because they're not going to influence, they're not going to have a impact, like a positive impact on me. You know what I'm saying? But I think God definitely changed my perspective on it.
Yeah.
That like, as long as you know who you are in me, you can be a light to those people.
Exactly.
And I saw that happen when I started hanging out with this one girl at my school, and she knows about God, all this stuff, like doesn't really go to church. And once we would have more conversations about it, like, hey, like, what do you do on the side? And like all this stuff. And I would share it with her. I would get a text a few weeks later that's been like, hey, like, can I come to church with you? Like the conversations we had were like, it made me like curious about like, and like wanting to more like pursue or like go see, and like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so that's where like God had definitely shown me like, you can ultimately, you're a light to those around you.
Yeah.
And I think like definitely not shutting those out, but setting up a boundary, where it's like, I know like what my assignment is, where God is placing me, but like, I'm not going to shun you out because like, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so, and I've had really great conversations like as a result of that, you know what I'm saying? So I think what you're asking, I think that you definitely can, but it's about where your heart lies.
Yeah.
And like, if you know you're going to be negatively impacted by these people, and you're going to go into things that were of your old ways or like whatever they were, or it's not going to put you in the right direction, set a boundary for yourself. Exactly. Learn how to say no.
Yeah.
No,
I agree with you. Do you think the fear of missing out impacts a lot of young people when it comes to that? Because I think it's a pretty much an overstatement to say that if you become a Christian, you're going to miss out on so many things that you're going to miss out on the world. Like it's one thing to say like, I'm a Christian to the point where I'm going to miss out on my homecoming dance, like, or this and that, and they take it to so many extremes to the point to where maybe there's that trickle of fear of like, no, I got to be inclusive to my friends as much as possible because I may miss out on experiences or I may miss out on certain things. And then it begins to trickle down into areas where it is not holy or pleasing to God. And now all of a sudden you're becoming the world. You're starting to do things that you normally wouldn't do. And then it begins to affect your relationship with God.
Absolutely.
So it's a very interesting dynamic, I have a very interesting perspective on this because I'm in a stage of my life where the reality is I spend more time hanging out with non-Christians than Christians. And it's not necessarily because I choose to, but because my occupations, my life, the things that surround my life outside of ministry, outside of church, puts me in a place to do so.
Right.
And so my perspective in regards to who do you hang around, who's in your inner circle, who are you surrounded by, may be a little bit different than most people, because I believe both extremes can be very bad.
Right.
So I believe being an extreme where you're not connected with your church community, but you're connected with the world community is very bad. Why? Because of sin, because of what you open yourself to, because of the path that it leads you, because it could stray you away from God. But the other one, which is I'm going to ignore people who are of the worldly culture or even have signs of it, but be completely connected into the Christian kingdom or glued to the Christian culture and people who kind of think the same way I think or feel the same way I feel, will limit you from your calling. And so what we'll do is we'll put you in a bubble to the point to where you're just hanging out with the same community, but having zero impact on the world.
Yeah, that's good.
So this is my perspective on it. This is my testimony on it. When I first came to church, I came in here as a very worldly, very jockey boy. Like I came, I was an athlete. I liked to party a lot. I came into this youth ministry. And even when I came to this youth ministry, I was still doing the same things that I was doing.
Right.
But there was a moment about a month and a half, 2 months later, where I threw a party at my house and it got online. And so random people were showing up at my house. I didn't even know who they were. People from the Sac State football team were showing up.
Oh my gosh.
A bunch of frat boys were showing up. A bunch of people, about 200 people in my house. But I was doing this before. Typically, it was more kickbacks. I was kind of getting away with it. But then it went bad. 200 people in my house.
The whole block was in your house.
The whole block was in my house. And we lived in a little court in an elderly neighborhood at the time. And so you had cars like circled around everywhere. I'm freaking out. I had to hire a bouncer on the spot.
Stop.
Literally to protect the gate, because I'm like, people are trying to get in and I got to get this figured out.
Right.
And I had to shut down this party. So I decided to shut down this party. Oh, and to top it all off, my grandparents lived next door. They could hear everything.
Girl.
So I'm in big trouble at this point. So I shut it down. Everything goes well. Basically, I'm thinking everybody is gone except for the few people that are trying to help me clean up. Why? Because my mom's going to be back in the morning. I need to clean up the house as much as possible. And cops show up, and I'm thinking like, oh, no, everything's good. Everything is fine. And he's like, well, is everything fine? I go out the gate. There's an underage girl passed out on my driveway. Yeah, 17 years old, passed out on my driveway, high schooler. And I'm like, oh, shoot, this is it. I messed up big time. I went so deep to the point to where this happened. And I didn't intentionally do it. I thought it was just going to be a kid, but it just happened in the moment. And I tried to shut it down, but things happened. The things that I was doing was catching up to me. And my only saving grace was grabbing grandma and helping. I was like, please, God, let her explain to the cops that I meant no bad will. And the cop let me go.
Wow.
And at that point, I decided I need to separate myself away from this stuff for a while.
Yeah.
Because it's beginning to catch up to me, and I don't want to cause any harm. I don't want to do any bad. I don't want to be the same person anymore, because 1, it was exhausting.
Yeah.
2, it was killing me inside.
Yeah.
And 3, it was bringing in all these negative emotions that I went into youth ministry to begin with. I walked in with that stuff, and I want to leave it before God. And so I found myself in a space where I stopped texting people that I used to party with a lot. I stopped hanging out with the same people. I found myself in a church group or this inner circle that I had that would help build me up. And I did this for about 4 years.
Wow.
I did it for a very, very extreme long period of time. Why? Because it was necessary for the season that I was in.
Yeah.
It was very much necessary. But one of the things that I did realize that while I was doing that, I kind of found myself in a space where when I went to work, when I went to school, I wasn't making any friends. I wasn't talking to people. I treated people like they were completely different. I treated them like they were aliens. That's how it was for me.
Right.
And so I began to like really look into it and understand like, okay, God, like I'm doing this, I'm here for you, but why is it that I feel disconnected from the world while at the same time being in your presence?
Wow.
And I began to like really review the Bible and have an understanding of the seasons that I was going through. 1 Corinthians 13 reminds us of that. Yeah, bad corruption will corrupt good morals. But at the same time, when we read in Romans 12:21 that we should not allow evil to overcome good, but we should allow good to overcome evil.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, what's the perfect example of that? And that was Jesus sitting down with the sinners.
Wow.
He had, before that, when he had started his ministry, he spent time in the desert. He spent time preparing himself as he was filled with the Holy Spirit, but left in the power of the Holy Spirit after the desert. He put himself in a space where it was just him and God for a period of time of 40 days where he was tempted by the devil, through corruption and the things that he tried to offer. Jesus said he was going to give him the world, and he wasn't tempted, but he left in power of the Holy Spirit. While his inner circle, the disciples, the people who were followers of Christ, he began to build them up. He said, in the end of the day, this was not meant just for you guys. It was meant for me, for the sinners.
Wow.
And him sitting down, and especially calling Matthew at that time, as he's sitting down with tax collectors, the IRS, nobody likes them. Right. Like, not even the sinners like them. And he's sitting down with them and eating with them. And the people begin to question him. He said, like, it's not the healthy that need the doctor, but it's the sick.
Wow.
It's not that. No, I'm not here to call on the righteous. I'm here to call out the sinners.
Yeah, that's good.
And so my perspective of that in that time when I said that hanging too closely into a Christian culture will shelter us to the point that it'll allow us to literally disregard the calling that God has placed on us is even a greater sin, that we're not using the power that God has given us to go out and change the world. No, that's selfishness.
Yeah, that's good.
That's selfishness to say, no, I need to get my life figured out. I need to figure out the right time for me. I want my blessing. I want my financial opportunity. I want that promotion. I want this specific family. I want all of this. But Jesus is saying exactly, it's like, no, once you get your life figured out, once you understand who you are in Christ, no, you need to go out and serve others. You need to go out and reach out to those that are in poverty, not financially or anything like that. No, but in poverty of needing me, this fresh outpouring of my Holy Spirit in them.
Wow.
And so I find myself in a space where a lot of the people that I have conversations are actually not people that go to church. Are they going to go out and try to tempt me? No. Yeah, of course they are. But they're not going to.
Right.
Because I'm secure in my faith.
Right.
Once you have a security in your faith, nothing should be able to break that.
Absolutely.
But with the understanding that you're going to be in a space and in a time and in a moment where not everybody's going to work at church full time, and you're just going to hang out with people that are homegrown in the church, that got their lives figured out, that have a strong relationship with God. That's not the case. No, you're going to go out in the workspace and you're going to have to hang out with the atheist. You're going to have to hang out with the sinner. You have to hang out with the Muslim.
Yep.
You're going to have to be able to go out there and talk to these people. Why? Because that's what God intended to be with.
Yeah.
He said, I'm not going to keep this gospel in one little nation. No, I'm here to spread it throughout the entire nations. That was the whole point of him ascending into heaven.
Wow.
That was the whole point of the new covenant, is that we're going to go have the opportunity to go out and spread it across the world so that people may have the opportunity to encounter him and embrace him and be saved.
Wow.
We should not keep this for ourselves. And so that's really my perspective on it. Yeah, you put yourself in a space where if you don't have your life figured out, maybe it's not your season to go out and help that friend. And maybe they drift away over time. But there will come a time where a person that was just like that friend may be in that same space and you're ready. You've already gone through your desert. You've already been tempted. And you know that you're secure in your faith. Now it's the time to be able to do so.
Wow.
Yeah. I think one of the main messages is that you can't just focus on you your entire life.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there are things that you're going to have to figure out. There are things come up in life all the time. But what fruits are you bearing? If you're not bearing any fruits, but you're trying to get your life figured out, guess what? It's meaningless.
Yeah, come on.
We should be bearing the fruits first.
Yeah.
And then after that, allow life to play out naturally for itself. What are your thoughts of everything I just said?
I mean, that's spot on, because I definitely, like what you said, it's a mix of things. You definitely went through things that, like, was me during high school. 1000%.
Oh,
okay.
Man.
And
you threw a party with 200 people?
I didn't do that.
Oh, okay. All
but
right. I was about to say.
I was the one attending.
Man.
Yeah.
It's called We Function or Me Function. It was one of those sites. Daryl, have you ever heard of that beforehand? No, you have not? Dang. It was a big deal back in the day. I don't know why.
Huh.
It was kind of crazy. My address ended up on that site. That's how that story happened.
That's crazy.
Oh man. I think it was like a California thing, honestly. Like you can do it in any area. But that site died. That was so like 2011, 2010. So
that was so yesterday. It's fine.
That was so yesterday. But shoot, you know?
No, yeah. I definitely that's where I was at, like in high school, you know, like just like lost and like doing the wrong things. And like you said, like I definitely caught it like catching up to me. Like my actions were coming to hunt me down, you know, and that happens. And I think that ultimately, like, that's what changed my life, though, you know? And so I think that's great. And then I also, about you talking about going out and like hanging out and talking to people that like aren't Christian.
Yeah.
It's definitely, that was what I experienced in high school. And I think I'm going to be learning more throughout, college. Definitely learning more throughout college, because I saw myself being like, well, in the beginning, I was like, well, where are the people that I can like have a good space around and like will lead me to Christ? You know what I'm saying? Like, but now that like more time has passed and my relationship with God has gotten stronger, and I'm like you said, like I'm secure in like my faith and secure in like who God tells me that I am.
Yeah. I
was like, well, I don't have a problem with talking to someone that's not of the faith or like that's not whatever, you know, because ultimately the thing that I hear the most is like, well, I just want to hang around you more because like there's something different about you. Yeah. You know? And I think that's the thing that like when we are walking in our calling and like we are walking in who God has called us to be. Yeah. That's when like people will see that. Yeah. You know? And I think that is the light like to other people. And I think it's really important to like even be in community with those people as well. So I completely agree with that. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. They're going to have to sit down and eat at some point, but where are they going to eat? Mm-hmm. I think that's the truth of it. Mm-hmm. And it's funny that we say that because in our selfish desires, the thing that we want in our relationship with God, one of the things that we want is that person to be that way, to be there to help build us up. Right. It's our seeking natural desire to want that. Why? Because that's what God intended it to be. Right. As iron sharpens iron, one man sharpens another. Mm-hmm. That's a great thing. We don't want to be around people that are folly and people that can't speak truth. We want people that are wise in our lives. Mm-hmm. But it comes to the point to where that's all we're seeking when we're going out at school, when we're going out at our jobs, when we're going out and hanging out with friends. But in reality, while we're trying to go out and seek a doctor, maybe God is trying to use you as an antidote for others. Wow. And we got to understand the seasons and the positions that we're in, because you go around, you probably talk to some of your classmates. How many of them tell you that they're openly Christian? Not many. Not many. At all. You know, maybe you're just the one person in that class out of 30 people, and you're like, oh, I need somebody else to be. Who is out there to help me build me up? But in reality, it's like, no, I placed you in that classroom to help the person that's to your right. To speak to them. Why? Because they're going through things in their life. Their parents are getting divorced. They're struggling in school. They got straight Fs. They have no hope. They feel like they have no future. They feel like they're going to go out and live on the streets. Maybe you're the antidote that God had placed you right there in that season, in that moment, in that time right now to go out and speak truth to them. Yeah. To tell them that there is a savior in every situation that can break every chain of generational divorce, that could break every chain of poverty, and his name is Jesus. You just submit to him. Yeah. I think a lot of times as we focus on our needs, we miss out on the true opportunity of bringing a son or daughter back home. Yeah. And we will have to go through that season. We will have to go through that season of literally being separated away from the world a little bit, especially when we went through hard times. But there's going to be a come to a point where God's like, nope, I have already molded you. You have been renewed. You have been clean. Quit trying to seek for yourself. No. Yeah. I'm here to set you out now. I'm here to send you out now to go out and bring another Tiffany back home to me. Yeah. Bring another Pastor Gabe back home to me. Bring another Daryl back home to me. Right. Yeah. There comes that season where we have to go out and do that, but got to bear the fruits. Yeah. If we don't bear the fruits, it's going to be very, very hard. It's going to be very, very difficult. No, you don't need your finances in place to be able to do this. I shared my testimony. I came in as a youth pastor. I had $17,000 in student loans. My life wasn't figured out. I didn't have a career ready yet. I was still in school. I was working full time. I had a wedding I had to pay for. It was a little rough thinking about it. But no. Love, calling, none of all that stuff that I deal with, none of that compares to the glory that will be revealed in us when we go out and live out our calling and live out our purpose as what? 1, to love God. 2, to love others. 3, to go out and preach the gospel. Yeah. That's what we're meant for. That's what we're called to do. Yeah. So this has been amazing, right?
a lot of information here. So I just want to thank you for being part of this.
Of course.
Obviously, you were like, let me get on this podcast. I'm like, let's get you on here. Let's talk about this. Let's do what we need to do. We definitely got to do another subject sometime. We'll have more conversations and just really dive into this, and we'll continue to blow this thing up, you know? Man. But next week.
I want to be here for that one.
I don't know. Like, we don't have enough space inside of here, but I think next week should be like, when we record this, we do our recordings on either Thursdays or Fridays, but when we record this one's going to be huge.
Yeah.
This one's going to be awesome. Why? Because we're going to do exactly what we're talking about. We're going to practice what we preach. I have a special friend that's going to come on here. He knows that I'm a pastor. He knows who I am as a person. And he's not necessarily a person that does go to church. And I told him, this is a Christian podcast. Are you sure you want to be part of it? He's like, absolutely. I'm like, all right. Be ready to ask me questions. I also want to hear your testimony. And we'll go from there.
All right.
And so next week will be like our first apologetics podcast. I'm bringing in a good friend of mine. He wanted to be part of this. And that's the amazing thing, too.
That's awesome.
He doesn't even go to church like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's like, yeah, I want to be part of this. I want to see you and watch what God watch what God does.
That's awesome.
That's going to be amazing. And that's another thing that I want to say too, is in leading that up, him being an example of that is a reminder that us as Christians, we need to step up our game.
Absolutely.
We don't want to be in a place where Jesus is like, the harvest is plenty, but the workers are few. That we don't want to be in that space. And so he's willing to like take some time out of his day. He's like, I don't know what you got going on here, but I want to be part of it. It's going to be amazing. So episode 4, that's about to come out next Monday. You don't want to miss out on it.
It's going to be fire.
It is going to be swell.
Super swell.
Super swell.
Team Red.
Team Red. Oh, Team Swell. You took a little bit of a jab, right?
Yep.
That's an inside message for our audience to a couple of other our leaders, but we'll see what happens there.
Yep.
You excited for the summer, though?
Oh, I'm so excited. This is my first Summer Olympics, like, as a leader.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm coming in, and everyone, should be ready for the heat because I'm competitive, and they never played with me before, so.
Exactly. For any of the parents or any of the youth out there in the Sacramento area at New Season Youth, 6555 44th Street, Sacramento, California, 95823. We are having our annual Summer Olympics happening this summer. We have youth nights every Wednesday here at 7 p.m. We also have a Bible study that happens every Tuesday at 7 p.m. as well. But the Summer Olympics, they're about to go down. And it looks like Team Red, I'm not going to say the name yet, but Team Red is about to be on fire. We just finished up our draft, so it's going to be amazing. I think it's going to be a pretty close one. I don't know if it'll be as close as 2022. That was like, but I think it's going to be very, very competitive this year. And so I'm super excited for it.
Me too.
It's your first time as a leader too. And your team, well, you guys took third when you were a youth, right? That was.
I think so. Yeah. I don't think we did too hot.
No.
That's because I wasn't a leader that time.
Because you weren't a leader that time. So what you're saying is the leaders that was leading wasn't that good.
No. I think the team members always bring everything to the plate.
Oh.
Man. Who's the leader of the sheep?
Oh, man. That was a bit of a jab.
Yeah.
Because that leader is still in our leadership team today.
I'm not going to say any names. Not going to say any names.
Shots fired.
You're
going to, we'll see. And Daryl, you're representing as well. So that's going to be awesome. But we will see what happens. Honestly, I'm super excited.
Me too.
Also, just to let you guys know, if you want to follow our youth ministry at New NSU SAC, Instagram and TikTok. For our TikTok, we post all the clips from this podcast. So we'll go ahead. We'll put a link down below. If you want the Swell sweatshirt, let you know. I'm going to send you a link of what the sweatshirt is, but obviously the design, we will go ahead and get that posted.
And get color red.
Exactly. Get whatever color you want. We have like 14 different options. You don't have to select one specific color, but if you believe in the Swell movement, let me know, and we can go ahead and hook you up with a sweatshirt. Just email us, and then we'll be able to supply that for you. Last but certainly not least, don't miss out on next week's podcast. I believe, these episodes have been great, but this is going to be the one. This is going to be the one where we come together and we come in agreement and we really answer the questions about Christianity. And honestly, it's going to be a little bit of a test.
Yeah.
I'm going to be excited for the test, though. You know, I think it's going to be awesome. It's going to be amazing. And the person that we're going to bring in, we're going to bring an interesting dynamic.
Oh yeah.
You know, because we're friends. And we're friends. You know, we're gonna do us.
Yeah.
So
that's what it's all about.
We'll see what happens. Well, we love you guys. God bless you, and may this be a great experience for you. Peace.